Welcome to the Bowel Chronicles, where we dive deep into the world of bowel health. I'm your host, Nikki Kilpatrick, and on this podcast we have raw and candid conversations with individuals facing various bowel conditions and illnesses. Through personal stories and shared experiences, we illuminate resilience and courage in the face of adversity. Be reminded that each story is personal and unique. These conversations are not to be taken as medical advice or to replace guidance from a doctor or healthcare provider. Our aim is to inspire and empower through these amazing stories, amplifying voices often unheard. So join us as we embark on this journey together. Sit back, listen, and be inspired. Enjoy the episode. Well, hello guys, and welcome back to another episode of the Bowel Chronicles. I'm your host, Nikki Kilpatrick, and today we are joined by the lovely Nikki in Bournemouth. Nikki, it's so good to have you here. Share some of your story with us today, so thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Nikki, your journey is one of Crohn's. People will know you on social media as Jones versus Crohn's, and I absolutely love that handle. It's one I do not forget. But let's kick off the interview with you sharing a little bit about how you came to be diagnosed with Crohn's disease. How old were you, and what were some of your symptoms?
Of course, I was actually diagnosed at 16. I had the disease probably from 14. I was undiagnosed for 2 years, went back and forth to the doctors, as I know many of people who have IBD have had similar experiences. I was questioned about my diet, whether I was taking drugs, laxatives, if I could be pregnant. All of the list went on. And it wasn't until I got a perianal abscess at 16 that they sort of put the two together, and then I got diagnosed with Crohn's disease. So from 14 to 16, it was really tricky to navigate. From 16 onwards, I've been on different treatments, different drugs, and looked after in a way that most of my life I've managed to keep it at bay with the odd hiccup.
Yeah. So what were your symptoms, Nikki?
So blood loss, diarrhea, I had sickness, weight loss, anemia, hair loss. I was exhausted, so fatigue, just beyond tired. And I think mine was probably triggered. I know that stress is a big trigger. And I was taking my GCSEs, and I remember really struggling just to even stay awake, like throughout exams and stuff. So yeah, they were my main symptoms. But the biggest thing was probably the weight loss. And then with the perianal abscess, that was the icing on the cake, and they put all the symptoms together along with obviously a perineal abscess and worked out that I had Crohn's.
Wow.
Yeah.
So it was 2 years. It was probably the longest 2 years of your life getting an answer because you knew there was something wrong with your body.
Yeah, and I think that was the really hard thing. And I remember my mum taking me to the doctors and her saying, could it be Crohn's disease? And they said, no, she's too young. So it was flagged up and ignored. I think at that age, people so often think that going down the eating disorder route. And, when you have a flare like that, you probably do stop eating as much because the aftermath is so horrific to deal with that actually they could say maybe it's an eating disorder because she's not eating enough, which I wasn't, but there was a reason why I wasn't eating enough. So yeah,
Terrified the aftermath that eating impacted you with.
Yeah.
So that was really, really difficult. You were obviously trying to do your GCSEs, which can be a stressful season, and then stress is one of the major triggers for inflammatory bowel disease. It doesn't do you any favours. How did they actually go through the diagnosis process?
I don't really remember it being a process. So I went in for surgery for the perineal abscess, and then I basically got an appointment with another doctor who's walked me into his office, and he said, so when were you diagnosed with Crohn's disease? And I said, now, like I haven't been. And it went from there. And that consultant is actually still my consultant now. I'm really lucky to have had that level of stability all the way through. So yeah, there wasn't like a process of it. It was just, I don't remember it being a process. I remember it just being like a sudden shock and I'd never heard of it other than my mum mentioning it. I'd never heard of Crohn's disease, but I just remember feeling relief that there was answers. The enormity probably didn't hit straight away. The fact that this is forever, and forever when you're 16 doesn't seem that bad, but when you look back on it, you think, oh, if someone diagnosed, I've got a 14-year-old, so if someone said to me she's got this illness forever, that would be terrifying. But in the moment, you're just given that, and you just handle it. And I did handle it. I carried on. I tried to get into college. I unfortunately was too poorly and I had to leave college, so I couldn't complete that. And yeah, I just cracked on. I don't remember there being a huge process about it. It was just very much like perianal or illness for 2 years, perianal abscess, and then diagnosis, and then that was it. I was off on treatment, steroids and infliximab and all the ones that you start with. So that's how it all came about.
What was that like as a 16-year-old or teenager, navigating friendships with your peers? Could you do normal things that a teenager
It wasn't easy. It was I feel like having diarrhea and blood loss and that sort of thing is such a taboo, even more so then, was such a taboo thing. People didn't talk about it. So yeah, it was tricky. And I remember not telling the truth to my friends. So people would say, like, well, what's Crohn's disease? And I'd say, oh, it gives you diarrhea and it gives you sickness, but I don't really get the diarrhea side. Of course I got the diarrhea side, but I was so terrified of what people would think at 16, 17 that, oh, that girl's got diarrhea and blood loss, that I just didn't ever admit it. It took me a long time to be confident enough to admit it. And with the abscess that I had, I didn't talk about that for years. Nobody knew. It was top secret. Family knew, close friends, and that was it. And nobody was ever allowed to talk about it because I was so ashamed. So yeah, it's taken a lot for me to get to the point of talking about it. And I guess that's where the Instagram page started up. Obviously my story went on a little bit further later on in life, a couple of years ago, and I was changing the narrative. I spent my younger years in the first diagnosis not telling anybody or being secretive about it or making sure my friends didn't tell anyone, and all of that feeling around it of being ashamed. And this time round, I was straight to the point, like, I'm not going to do that. It's so unhealthy for me. I'm going to flip this and I'm going to do my best to turn it into a positive. So that's where the talking about it has come round.
Amazing, absolutely amazing. So you have 2 children, so you were obviously able to navigate a fairly normal life, being on some of those medications. I'm assuming for a few years, your medications, you were responding to those.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so what my body seems to do, and I don't know whether it's normal or not, but every couple of years I build up antibodies to the drug that I'm on and I get switched to the next one. So I've been on quite a few. I'm currently on vedolizumab and I've been on that for must be 3 or 4 years. So this one seems to be holding out a little bit longer, which is great. Yes, I have got 2 children. Funnily enough, other than morning sickness with my son, the 2 pregnancies are probably 2 blocks of the healthiest I've ever been. My body just went into, okay, we've got to do something else. We're not focusing on you anymore. And it just worked.
And it's funny you say that. I was talking to someone else recently who said the same thing. They were really healthy during pregnancy.
Yeah, I was really sick with my son, but it was morning sickness. And it sounds bizarre, but it was so nice to be sick for a good reason. It didn't bother me at all. It's just like, oh yeah, I've been sick again this morning, but that's okay because I'm having a baby. So it's funny how your mind, when you've been poorly for so many years, how your mind turns things around.
Yeah. And so your childbirths and everything, were they okay? Were they normal?
I had 2 planned C-sections. So because of my abscess that I'd had, I have cetons in place. So they felt it would be safer to just have 2 C-sections. And that's what I did. And I think because I had those cetons put in around 17, I think I was, I sort of always knew that natural childbirth probably wouldn't be for me. So before 17, you don't really think about having babies. And then as soon as I did think about babies, it was like, well, I know I won't be able to give birth naturally. So that's never been something that I've beaten myself up about or felt less of a mum about. As long as I grew them, they arrived safely, and that's all that matters, really.
Yeah. Do you have any thoughts or worries about it being hereditary and being passed on?
Yeah, massively. Yeah, and I think there is an element of guilt that comes with that. I don't know whether either of my children will end up with IBD. And even if they do, it won't necessarily be because of me. But again, that's a mental battle. And as a mother, you can't help but feel that way. So I really hope that they don't. But if they do, they'll have someone close by who is understanding, and I will help them in any way I can to get through it.
Yeah. And I'm assuming, and correct me if I'm wrong here, your mum had mentioned the idea of Crohn's whenever you were younger. Was there anyone else in your family who had IBD?
No, I'm the first one. IBS is a thing. Like my mum has probably got IBS. My sister, I think, probably has. And actually, my brother has had tummy issues in the past. But no one else has got Crohn's. It's just me.
Yeah. Well, then that will maybe be the same thing that will run in your family.
Yeah, hopefully.
Yeah. You're just listening to some of your story before we hit record. I'm like, you're just a one in so many, I don't know, millions type of a creature. Things happen to you.
Yeah.
Not your average
Not your
person.
average person, no. Not
Yeah.
anymore.
So lead us up then to you had to have emergency surgery. Tell us a little bit about what was happening when. How long ago was that first?
2023, I had the emergency surgery. So I was booked in. I was having routine checks, as we all do, colonoscopies and scans, and it was noted that I had 2 strictures in my colon. And I was in a really healthy place. I was okay. So my consultant said to me, "Do you know what? It's probably a good time to operate sooner rather than later, rather than leave it until you're flaring or you're really uncomfortable or it causes a blockage. Let's get you operated on. We'll do a resection. So we'll just take those 2 narrowings out and join you back together. It'll be keyhole surgery and a 6-week recovery." I said, okay. He said, "You're probably looking at between 4 and 6 days in hospital."
Okay. Could you feel? Did you have any indication that there was strictures there? Was there anything going on? Were you any pain?
Yeah, so I was having pain after eating. It wasn't excruciating pain. It was just more like, I would say, trap wind. And how they explained it to me is the strictures were so narrow that where the poo was trying to pass after I'd eaten, it was just struggling. So what would have happened if I'd left it is I could have risked bowel perforation. With strictures, there's also a risk of them turning cancerous. So that was another risk that I was not willing to take.
Yes.
So yeah, it was the risks with it, but I was uncomfortable after eating. Not to the point where it was affecting my life though. So I was still living a normal life. I think when you have IBD, you get so used to bellyache. Like tummy ache is just day-to-day life. And if you'd given that tummy ache to somebody else, they wouldn't have coped with it, or they would have felt like something was really wrong. But because I've had it for 17 years at this point, tummy ache was normal to me. So that's where I was at with it. So my consultant referred me to a surgeon. I met with a surgeon and he just basically confirmed that the strictures were there and the procedure was going to be keyhole, chop them out, join you back in, 6 days, 6 weeks recovery, not driving, etc. So I packed my bags and I think it was about 5 or 6 weeks later. It wasn't a long wait. Packed my bags and thought, right, 6 days in hospital, I can do this. And I had the operation on the 16th of March, 2023, and it all just went rapidly downhill from there. I unfortunately my spleen was nicked during the first keyhole operation, so that went from keyhole through to open surgery. And from that point, I ended up with sepsis because my stitches came undone, and my bowels leaked into my body. So I was in a really, really dangerous place. I had a couple of CT scans. The second CT scan showed what had happened. So I was rushed back down within 2 hours to another surgery. So 6 days after the initial, and I had a stoma formed. I think it was a 7-hour operation, the second one. And then I was left in an induced coma and put into ICU to recover. And then following that, I had a further 3 weeks in hospital. So in total, it was a 4-week stay. So that was operation 1 and 2.
Let's just pause here for a little second. Your signal was glitching there whenever you said your spleen was nicked during surgery. So I just want to make sure our viewers and listeners actually realise why you got septic and why you had to go in for the emergency surgery, or further emergency surgery. So you We don't share this story to scare anyone. We share this story to raise awareness. You are a unique person, and
I
these
am, yeah.
things happen during surgery. And you've come a very long way since then. You were basically going in for this keyhole surgery.
Yeah.
Straightforward. We're going to snip here, get rid of those strictures and do a resection.
Yeah.
And 6 days in hospital, and you'll be on your way and
Yeah.
rebirth 6 weeks time.
Yeah.
And now it's 2 surgeries, and you waking up and you have a stoma.
Mm-hmm.
Did it ever occur to you that you would have a stoma?
It was talked about, because I think anytime you go for bowel surgery, they're always tricky surgeries, and there's always a risk.
Yeah.
It was talked about, and the one thing I said to my surgeon is, if you go in there and it's a right pickle and there's more things that you're not sure about, or you think that I will need stoma surgery within the next year, I'd rather you do it now than have another surgery in a short time. I don't want to have to go through this again. I don't want to have to put my children through this again. So I knew that it was a possibility, but if I'm completely honest with myself, it wasn't going to happen to me. And I have always been quite open and honest about my story, but I do it with caution, because my story is a horror story. It's not your normal. What happened to me was really unfortunate. It was not my fault. It wasn't anything that I'd done that caused it. But there's a percentage of me that thinks I want to share my story, because I probably went into that first operation quite naive, thinking that won't ever happen to me. I will be fine. I'll be out in 6 days. This is going to be fine. I wish that I had known more. I wish that I had known more about the signs of sepsis. I wish that I had known that it could have gone from keyhole to open. I would have gone in feeling more prepared, I think. Or would I? I don't know. Maybe I wouldn't have done. Maybe you can't prepare yourself for that. Maybe filling yourself with the what ifs is the wrong thing to do as well. I will never know how I've dealt with this or handled it or went into it, if I did it the right way. So yeah, it was really horrific, but not every story is like mine. You get some stories that are just amazing. There's people coming in and out of the hospital in beds next to me, twice my age, leaving before me. So it wasn't.
Yeah. What was that? What was those 6 days like? Between your first surgery and then.
Terrifying. I noticed within a day or two that these bruises were coming up on my limbs, all up my arms and down my legs. And I was asking nurses and staff and consultants and whoever would speak to me, blood specialists, what is going on here? And they were saying that it was down to my fingers, where I was itching because I was on morphine. That was my fingerprints that were leaving the bruising. And it just got worse and worse and worse. And for people that have had sepsis, the only way I can really describe it is that it feels like you're dying and you don't know why. I was seeing double. I was delirious, completely off my rocker. And looking back on it, I also feel like I wish I'd known the symptoms of sepsis more, because maybe I could have flagged it and it wouldn't have got as bad as it did, because it got to the point where I was stage 4. I've been told that if I was 20 years older, I wouldn't have survived, because the sepsis was so severe. So maybe if I'd known, because I don't think sepsis is picked up quite easily in blood tests straight away. So they were doing the blood test, they were doing the cultures, but it wasn't showing. I had a lot of other symptoms, but because the bloods weren't coming back, they weren't treating me. So it got bad. And I feel like if I'd known those symptoms of sepsis, what I was having, maybe I could have flagged it, pushed further, pushed harder, and been more aware of it. Although I was also, like I said, completely delirious, so I probably wouldn't have done. But again, it's those what ifs. I should have done this. I should have done that. There isn't anything I should have done. It was left, unfortunately. But luckily saved before it got to the worst case scenario.
So they whisk you away to another emergency surgery.
Yeah.
And you waking up with an ileostomy.
I did, yeah.
Stoma under your small bowel. Was that a loop ileostomy? Was it reversible or?
Yeah, loop. Yes, it was reversible. Yeah. It's the same.
So they brought a little bit. It's still
Sorry?
the same?
Yeah.
So they brought a little bit of your small bowel out through an opening on your skin, and then obviously that's your stoma, and a stoma bag is attached for anyone that's listening that isn't aware of what an ileostomy stoma is.
Yeah.
How did you react to that? I mean, it's obviously it's a major shock that you have had sepsis and you're very unwell. When you woke up from surgery, were you okay when you woke up?
I was still very unwell. I remember the words "you're not out the woods yet" being repeated to me a lot. I was also given ketamine as a pain relief. So it's apparently quite a thing they do in ICU. So I was, again, not with it. I don't think I really came round properly for about 4 to 5 days. And it was really bizarre because there was days where I could pick myself up and I could speak to people, and then other days where I just didn't speak. I couldn't bear to even speak to anyone. I wouldn't have anyone come and visit me at the hospital apart from immediate family. Friends were asking if they could come and see me, and I just said no, like I don't want to see anybody. I felt so unlike myself for the time that I was in there, and which didn't help. I actually gained 3 stone of weight whilst this was after the second operation, due to steroids. So I was left on steroids for too long. Yeah. So 3 stone of steroid weight.
Usually the complete opposite, where someone's in hospital.
So, being obviously having 2 open surgeries and then putting on that weight, I was like unable to get up. I was so frail. I didn't eat for 3 weeks. I was on TPN. So I was in a real pickle for a long time whilst I was in there. So I think it's a bit of a mental thing where you block it out, don't you? There's parts of it that I really remember. There's other parts where I don't remember what I was like. I'm sure if you spoke to my mum or my husband, they would tell you how I was behaving. But I think it was just putting one foot in front of the other. So this was now, it got to the point where I didn't see my children for 4 weeks because I was too poorly for them to come in and see me. So it was just one foot in front of the other to get home to see my kids. And every time I felt like the end was near, I was looking at being discharged, something else popped up, whether it was a collection or an infection or whatever it was. And because I'd been so poorly, they wouldn't let me go until I was, really ready. So it was a 4-week stay in the end.
Absolutely horrendous for your children to be going through that as well. For their mum.
That's one of the hardest things as a parent is saying to them when I left, I'll be back in 6 days. I'll be back in 4 days. Don't panic. They do this all the time. And then not going home for 4 weeks. It was bad.
That is absolutely horrific. Horrific for your children. Horrific for your family to be going through that.
Yeah.
I know it was like a temporary stoma. Did they explain that to you whenever you came through surgery, that it's temporary, you could have a reversal? What was that?
I think so. Yeah. I mean, I always knew it would be reversible. I think they must have told me before I went down that it'd be a reversible stoma. And then I think when I woke up, it was talked about. I don't remember it being like it's reversible. But from the beginning, I knew it was reversible. If I could always have it reversed, and that was an option to look at later on down the line. But at the time, it was just a case of get better, get out of here, and try and claw back to normality.
So what was life like then whenever you did get home and start to deal with the stoma that wasn't really planned?
Do you know what? It was when I left that hospital, thought I was ready. But actually getting home, it's almost like a highlight of how far away you are from where you were, because you can't make yourself a cup of tea. You can't get out of bed easily. You can't do the school run. You can't take the kids to football. There's so many things you can't clean. Couldn't clean the toilet. I was having to have help with everything. And I think where you get help in the hospital with the nurses and the staff, you don't think about those things. And then when you come home, it's highlighted. So yeah, the first few weeks were really tricky because it was like a mental battle of I'm so desperate to be back to where I was, but actually I feel like I'm further away because being home has highlighted how poorly I have been and how poorly I still am. So yeah, it took a long time. With regards to dealing with the stoma, that's where I feel like Instagram really helped me. I learned more from Instagram and other people, talking to other people, than I ever did with stoma nurses or anyone else. And that's not because the stoma nurses aren't good. They are. They're incredible people. But you don't understand what it's like to have a stoma until you have one. It's facts. You can't. So speaking to people on that platform was just massive for me. Watching videos of people change their bags, seeing what a stoma looks like, and knowing that mine looked like what theirs looked like, so that was okay. All those really small things that you don't think about. It was a massive help for me, and I really relied on the community, as we call it, on there to help me through those first few weeks.
I think it helps. It's good therapy, and it also helps you with accepting.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm not the only one. There's other people out there like me. They live a good life. I can live a good life, and it helps you come to terms with it.
Yeah.
But I can remember the year before I had my surgery, I was just watching people doing bag changes on Instagram constantly, listening to people's stories and going, right, okay, this isn't the worst thing in the world that can happen. No. But it's getting to that point of acceptance.
Yeah.
We kind of move past that, which you eventually did.
Yeah, I mean, I think acceptance is a really long process. I don't know if I'm there yet.
Yeah, every day.
I think maybe because it shouldn't have happened. It's getting past that point of feeling like that and just being okay with it. There are some days where I do accept it. It is what it is. It's happened. I'm dealing with it. And then other days when I think, no, do you know what? I shouldn't be here. This shouldn't have happened. Why has it happened to me? And you go down that line. And that's just, it takes time. It takes a lot of time. And I think I didn't do what you did and look at Instagram videos of people changing them. I didn't prepare myself. I never thought it would happen to me at that moment. I knew, like, even from 17, 16, when I got diagnosed with Crohn's disease, that at some point in my life I might have a stoma. But at that time, when I went in for that surgery, it wasn't happening to me.
What, after that stoma surgery and you came home, what was life like with Crohn's?
It was okay. My Crohn's hasn't really flared for quite a few years now. I've been really lucky with it. So once my bloods and stuff start showing anything, my consultant is bang on it and he switches it up and he says, like, you're not doing as well as you should be. Let's switch it up before it gets too bad. So yeah, I'm really lucky in that my Crohn's disease as a whole, over the last few years, I've been okay.
Yeah.
And yeah, with a stoma, I'm okay. I'm healthy.
So after you had that stoma surgery, which was March 23,
yeah, 23, yeah.
You then obviously get back on your feet and you were preparing for the London Marathon in 2024.
I was, yes. Yeah. So I went back, with the surgery after 23, I gradually went back to work. I didn't leave the house for the first 3 months, I don't think, for more than 2 hours, because I wouldn't empty my bag anywhere but home. But yeah, gradually I went back to the work in September, and gradually I picked my life back up, and I worked out. I learned to deal with it, and I was coping. And then I think it was in the so I started training for the London Marathon, started running in the January, and then the beginning of April, I just noticed that I was just not in pain, but maybe uncomfortable. So I spoke to my consultant. My consultant called for a CT scan, and it showed that I had a buildup of gas in my colon. So I spoke with my surgeon. So this is April 2024. So this is a few weeks away from the marathon. I spoke to my surgeon, and he said, look, let's get you in for a scope. The CT scan is showing that you've got a buildup. I'll pop a scope through your stoma and decompress it. And he knew that I was running the London Marathon. both my consultant and my surgeon were super supportive of it. They were really pleased that I was doing it. And the idea was to do it so I was more comfortable for the marathon in the coming days. So I was booked in. I went to the Excel on the Wednesday to pick up my bib, and on the Thursday I went in for this scope. I came home on the Thursday afternoon, unable to even put my own leggings back on because my tummy was so swollen. I came home in hospital trousers. And then from that point, I again couldn't move, couldn't bend, the pain was unbearable. So I battled through it through the night, stayed awake all night, and then woke up the next morning and my husband took the kids to school and said, we're going back in. So I went back into hospital and a CT scan was done within an hour, and it showed that my bowel had been perforated in more than one place. So I had more than one hole in my bowel and it was leaking, and I was going back in for surgery within an hour. I think it was an hour and a half later I was back in, and a second stoma was formed. So I woke up from that one. I think that was a 6 or 7 hour operation again, and I woke up with a second stoma. And that was 2 days for the London Marathon.
So not only just do we have one break case going on here, but this happens for a second time.
It does, yeah. And again, as I said earlier on, I struggle with how much I should share and how much I shouldn't share. When you have a colonoscopy, you sign that bit of yellow paper. You know there's risks, but you never think it's going to happen to you. And I think it's a 0.005% chance to 0.008% chance of bowel perforation during a scope. And that was me. So it's really tricky to share your story but not terrify people. I don't want to scare people. I don't want people to be worried about going in for a colonoscopy. We have to do these things. I don't want to scare people, but it's my story and it is what happened. So,
you have a second stoma.
Yeah.
That is a colostomy type fistula.
Yeah, so it is a colostomy, but because it's not connected to anything, nothing really comes out of it apart from a really small amount of mucus every so often. So the stoma bags that I use are I think they're called they're caps, stoma caps. Yeah. So they're basically like a big plaster. So it's, as far as stomas, looking after stomas, that one, piece of cake. Don't really have to do anything with it. It's fine. But I do now have 2 stomas. Yeah.
And both are now permanent, or?
No, both are still reversible.
Both are still reversible?
Yeah, they are still reversible. But I think my aim last year was to get this marathon out the way, and then I was going to start considering, is reversal surgery for me? The thing with reversal surgery is what people don't take into consideration is I have Crohn's disease. I will always have Crohn's disease. So yes, I could go in for this reversal and, back to living without a stoma, but I could have a flare in 5 years' time, 2 years' time, even a year's time. And it could be so severe that I would need that surgery again. So if it was just me, I think the choices and the decisions would be easier. But like I said earlier on, I have 2 children. And I said to my children the first time, I'll be gone for 4 days and I'll be back. And I was gone for 4 weeks. The second time I went in for the scope, my daughter especially was in floods of tears when I left. And I said, Rue, they do this every day. It's fine. They do it every day. I was gone again for 3 weeks. So to put them through that, to say the other 3 surgeries I've had have been emergency, or they've had to be done. So the first one wasn't emergency, but it was necessary. I needed it. The second one was emergency. The third one was emergency. To say to my children, I could live how I am for the rest of my life, and that would be okay. But I don't want to. I want to try reversing at least one. I think just one at the moment. But to say to them, I'm going into hospital and it's my choice after I've put them through that, it's a real battle because I'm putting myself before them and their emotions. And as a mother, that's a really hard thing to do. I don't think that comes easily to anyone who's a mum, is to put yourself first, because that's not natural.
Yeah. And this is just not impacting your mental health, it's impacting your husband,
Yeah.
impacting your children.
Yeah.
Has there been any support offered?
I have had therapy, yeah. There was, funnily enough, I was put on the waiting list for therapy after the first operation, and I got a place, or I got an appointment after the third operation. So by that point, I was I really needed it. So yes, therapy has definitely helped me to talk about it. I do, unfortunately, I still suffer with panic attacks, anxiety. I'm super tearful. So all those things that come with PTSD, I tend to suffer with. So I've finished therapy for the time being. I'm going back shortly, and then we're looking at doing a different types, EMDR therapy. So that's something else that we're looking into. So, but
That I'm so glad to hear that. I think it just couldn't get any worse there if you had said no, nothing had been
no,
offered.
no, I have had help with that, and I think it's helped me talk about it more. I couldn't talk about it without bursting into tears. The panic attacks are happening less, but I also have other symptoms. It's a new thing since surgery number 3, is that I don't feel like my lungs are filling up enough, so I gasp for air sometimes. Just really bizarre. I don't, and people that are around me know what it is now. A lot of people who don't know me think I'm about to sneeze, or I'm about to say something. I'm not. I'm just, and it's one of those things that hopefully in time it will go. But at first I was really ashamed and embarrassed of it. But now if someone sort of looks at me and says, "What was that?" Sort of, it's anxiety. And because again, that's more spoken about, it's more acceptable to be anxious, to have PTSD, to have any sort of mental health problems, because it's more talked about. It's easier for people like myself to say, this is what it is, and it's just, oh, okay, and people move on from it.
Yeah, I mean, it's been such a traumatic experience.
Yeah.
As you say, you're careful with what you share of your story because it is so traumatic and your experience is a horror story.
Yeah.
But the reality is, this is your life. This is what you've gone through, and
Yeah.
it can happen. It has happened to you,
Yeah.
and just raising simple awareness of sepsis and being bruised and being able to pick up those things.
Yeah.
Obviously, could save someone else's life, and you're so brave sharing your story publicly. And I know you shared it Instagram or whatever. You also now you're an ambassador with Pelican and Respond.
I am. Yeah.
Get to be part of that.
Yeah.
Out of a really, really bad situation, there has been some good that you were able to raise awareness and help so many people.
Absolutely. And the people that I've met through this, I mean, you just can't get a nicer bunch of people. And yeah, if anything good has come from this, it's what I've learnt, how I go further on in life, how I see the world. Yeah, bad things happen. Bad things happen to good people. Bad things happen to bad people. But you just got to keep going, keep pedaling. And I know that things will get easier. They got easier last time. They will get easier again for me. And I know that I've got some hefty decisions to come my way yet, and the road is far from over for me. But with the support that I've got at home and online, and I never thought I'd be one of those people that speaks to people online, but I do. I've made some really, really good friends, and I'm definitely grateful for that.
So, even though you've had your second stoma, you have been preparing for the London Marathon this year because you are running that marathon this year.
I am, yes.
How
So
has that been?
after the emergency surgery in April last year, 2 days beforehand, my dad emailed the fundraiser of Crohn's, because I'm running for Crohn's and colitis. But last year, actually, I'd raised £5,000, which was I was mind blowing that we had done that. All of us, not just me. Like, I'd raised £5,000. My dad emailed and said, "This has happened. Nikki won't be running." And I think I put a post on Instagram because I'd started to get messages of good luck and and lovely messages come through, and I thought, I can't handle this. So I put a picture up on Instagram and just said, this is my current situation, I'm not going to be running. And Charlie, who is someone I've met through Instagram, she then she got out of the shower and had a thought, had a towel on her head, and did a video saying, Nikki can't run the London Marathon, this has happened, so we're going to run it for her. And people as far as LA and Canada were running for me because I couldn't do it. And I think it was a total of 322 miles in the end, was run for Crohn's and colitis because I couldn't do it, which was just, it was mind blowing. I would say,
emotional listening to you. I remember it. I remember
yeah,
it well.
it was. Yeah. I was lying in hospital, and I would say that was one of my darkest days because I was devastated that I couldn't do it. So the email was sent to Sarah. All these people around the world almost were running for me, and Sarah emailed me probably 3 days later and said, have a think about next year. I was like, I can't even move. I can't even get out of bed. And then, she emailed me again in the June, and she said, look, you're going to be back on the team this year or next year. And I just felt like I had unfinished business. I felt really sad that I didn't get to do my victory lap. And that's what it is, that the training is hard. It's time consuming. It's exhausting for a normal person, let alone someone with Crohn's disease. So I decided that I was going to go again. So I am currently in training. I'm not as ready as I was last year. But the idea this year is just to get around. In fact, last year, I believe my thing was I want to get to the finish line. This year, I'm all about the start line. As long as I can get to the start line, I'll be fine. I want the start line, but I also want the medal. I am doing training again. I'm not training as hard as I did last year because my body is a little bit broken still, mentally and physically. But the idea is just to get round and enjoy it.
And you will absolutely smash it. I have no doubt. I can't wait to see the Instagram highlights and tune in for the big day on the 27th of April, didn't you say?
27th of April, yes.
Wow. Nikki, it has been so good to hear your incredible story today.
Thank you.
If there was anything, and I don't know if there's anything left in there, if there was one piece of like a little golden nugget that you could share with younger Nikki, someone out there who's following along, listening maybe to this interview, who's on a similar journey, what would it be?
However long, however dark the tunnel is, there's light at the end of it.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. Oh gosh, you're a wish the wreck, so am I. I'm gonna need time out after this interview. Decompress it all. Yeah, amazing, absolutely amazing. Nikki, thank you so much for
thank you.
Just being so open and authentic, and it's been very, very humbling. So thank you so much. Guys, that is it from Nikki and myself today. It's over and out, but do come back and join us next week for another episode of the chat.